We've got another packed FarrCast for you this week. Michael Farr welcomes Kenny Polcari to dive into some of the earnings reports of market leaders and what it tells us about the trajectory of the broader economy. Dan Mahaffee gives us insight into the immigration debate, and Michael welcomes special guest Daryl Owen for a look at the state of American democracy. I hope you enjoy the show. Now let's get to your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome to the FarrCast. I'm Michael Farr. It is the 20th day of November, and everything's fine again, folks. Were you worried last week? Was everything going to hell? Were you wringing your hands? Were you biting your fingernails? Well, you can stop. Let your hands loose. Let the fingernails grow. Go for the mani-pedi because everything's fine. NVIDIA came out with earnings. They were great. They were hot. They had earnings of $1.30 a share versus $1.25 estimate. Revenues beat as well. $57 billion versus $54.9 billion. That left NVIDIA with a $4.5 trillion market cap yesterday at the close. And guess what happened? It went up 5% overnight pre-market. It's still holding at an up 5% level this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a $100 stock and it goes to 105, you can go, okay. Or you've got a $1,000 stock and it goes to 1,050, and you say, okay, I've got $50 more than my $1,000, and that's nice, and I like it up 50. When you have a $4.5 trillion company and it adds 5%, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You just added like 6 companies in market cap in about 24 seconds. It's incredible what just happened mathematically when a company at $4.5 trillion adds 5%. I'm going to go on. Net income for the quarter up 65%. We heard that Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and Google, in their earnings that have already reported, they've got plans to spend $380 billion this year, $380 billion on AI, this technology, and most of that, I think, is going to go to these chips. So there is a real fundamental support for this company. Now, are people paying too much for it? Is it too expensive? I'm not going to weigh in. We're not going to recommend shares of NVIDIA or not recommend shares of NVIDIA because we really don't do that. But what I'm going to show you is, as you look at this news and you try and sort through all of the hype, because that's our job here on the FarrCast. Let's get you through the hype. Let's get you to the numbers and give you a better way to look at it. My concern this morning, though, is the CEO, Jason Wong, is really excited and getting more excited about January's numbers and into 2026. And he's over the top. He's over the top. He's over the moon. They're firing on all cylinders. This is just, I always think it's better to underpromise and overdeliver, and I feel like his enthusiasm could be setting us up for a disappointment. And when this company, just think about that 5% that I spoke about before. When this company disappoints and takes a 5% hit, boom, boom, everybody takes a hit. I don't know if Kenny Polcari thinks we're going to take a hit. Boy, Bitcoin has taken a hit. We're down into the $90,000 range. We were up at $124,000 on Bitcoin. I didn't know why we were there, and I have no idea why we're here. We'll see if Polcari can do better than I. He usually does. Dollar is holding up. Oil at $60 a barrel is a big meh. So we're trying to sort through it. But right now, these earnings are good, and the animal spirits are high. Kenny Polcari, good morning, and welcome back to the FarrCast.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think that's a wrap because you hit it on every nail on the head. So I think we can say goodnight.
Okay, thank you, Kenny Polcari from Slate Stone.
No, I think you were 100%. You hit every nail. They got the market nervous. They ran the market. They hit the market over the last couple of days in anticipation of what Jensen Huang was going to say, how he was going to say it. Oh my God, what if he missed by $1 billion when we were talking about? Is it going to be 54? Is it going to be 55? Oh my God, what would that mean to the markets? What would that mean for investors? What would that say about AI? What would that say about the State of the Union? I mean, it got very hysterical, right? And
yes.
But to your point, He came out last night. He made the announcement. They beat, in fact, they even beat the whisper number. The whisper number was 57 billion, and he came in at 57.01. So he even beat the whisper number, and then he offered a very robust guidance. So to your point, I agree. Offering such a robust guidance back in the 61 or 62 billion dollar range for the next quarter, while it's aggressive and it's great, it might just be a little bit. He should probably just play it a little bit closer to the vest, right? So one way or the other, it is what it is. The market certainly likes it. It's up 5% to your point. But remember, they did take it down about 14% in the 2 weeks up till yesterday. So it's taken back 5 of the 14 it's lost. So it's still lower by about 9%. But all that means is that anxiety that has been created has now been kind of pushed away, and investors and financial advisors can once again focus on, okay, what's the data going to say? What's the Fed going to do next? How's that going to impact the economy? The data, not NVIDIA. How the
Let's go back to what
I
I said really there at the beginning, Kenny, that all of the nail biting and hand wringing and tears that we've been seeing in the media, you and I, with a lot of white hair, are saying, what? That wasn't a, I mean, okay, there were some soft days in there. That wasn't maybe it was a pullback, a little bit of a pullback, a pause that refreshed, but that wasn't a down market. That wasn't a correction, folks. That wasn't anything for all of the noise you heard. That was nothing. Nothing.
Right. And actually, if you look at the chart, and you draw the line, it is still the S&P hadn't even touched. If you draw it, not the 200-day moving average, just the trend line that goes across the bottoms of the S&P on the chart, you can see that we didn't even come to testing that long-term uptrend line. So we were nowhere near it. But what's interesting is that to guys like you and me, kind of scratching our heads going, what are you all talking about? I mean, to your point, the markets never traded anywhere near down 10%. I think the Russell was the one closest. That was down 8%. The Mag 7 might have been down 8.5%, but still well within what's considered a normal trading range. So, and I kept trying to reiterate that in the daily note that I write, because I thought, to your point, that this is getting like, am I missing something in this conversation? Because it doesn't feel necessarily as horrendous as maybe the media was making it feel. And so I think people did. Ones that I spoke to, kind of took advantage, picked spots, because there were some names that got arbitrarily dislocated. So, for instance, NVIDIA was down 14%. Right. NVIDIA was down 14%. Buying stock at 180, down 14% from its most recent high, in my mind, was not necessarily a bad idea. Now, I told people I think you should wait till you get a better sense, because it could have gone the other way. Had they missed, or had they put negative news out, you could have then seen everybody pile in. So, that one was one where you had to kind of sit on the edge a little bit.
Yep.
Apple was down 4% during that whole time. A total of 4% over this last
big whoop.
Hysteria was
big whoop. Huh? Big whoop.
Yeah, big whoop, right.
Big whoop. Big whoop. Okay. Now, look, ladies and gentlemen, we got to show you the other side of the market, and we can do that this morning. What do I mean? I mean, we've had this big Mag 7, this big run, but this is a very narrow group of companies that is feeding on AI and AI expectations. We're also getting insight this morning as to what's going on in the real economy and with real Americans. And boy, doesn't it seem like two separate, completely different worlds. Walmart hikes sales and earnings forecast as it attracts shoppers across incomes. So Walmart hiking sales, earnings forecast. This is great news for the economy. Really good news. They posted third quarter earnings and revenues that beat expectations. So they had a beat and a raise, is what we say on Wall Street. And they drew more shoppers across incomes, but also saw some temporary slowness from Snap. In the first report, so when I think about companies that you get a real view, real bellwether as to how the U.S. consumer is doing, and the U.S. consumer drives 2/3, 70% of the U.S. GDP and economy. Hey, this is as good a view as you get, and they're doing fine. And whatever price increases they've needed to pass along are being absorbed. Was the Snap sort of holiday interruption, whatever you want to call it? It didn't last that long. I'm not saying it wasn't significant. I'm certainly not saying that it wasn't painful. It was all of those things for some very vulnerable Americans, but it didn't shake the bottom line of the nation's biggest retailer. Kenny, what do you think when you look at Walmart after you look at Nvidia? It's got to make you feel a little better, doesn't it?
Of course it does. To your point, and again, you hit all the salient points. It is a statement about the health of the consumer, the health of the economy. It is a statement. Look, it said it attracted buyers across all income spectrums, right? Isn't that what they
Yes.
said? So, okay, maybe that means that maybe some of the higher price specialty stores might see a little bit of a hit, but in fact, Walmart being the biggest retailer in the nation, I think it's a very positive sign about the health of the U.S. economy at the moment. And so I'm with Michael. I think that's a very positive sign. Now, everyone's going to start screaming about the macro data and what's the labor market doing. I'm still in that camp that it's been a couple of months since we've seen a real NFP report. We're going to get one tomorrow, but it's going to be interesting to see what's happening in the labor market to balance that out.
Well, we've got to watch what's happening, of course, across all markets. As on the FarrCast, we cover Wall Street, Washington, and the world. And we've started with Wall Street this morning. Wall Street's very important to the U.S. economy. More important every day when you see a $4.5 trillion. I can't even say it. $4.5 trillion single company in market cap go up 5%. It's incredible. It's incredible. So we're watching that, but then Walmart's doing fine. We've got a Supreme Court decision coming up. Want to talk to Mahaffee about it, but the conservative justices have been signaling that they're not going to approve, that they're going to throw out these tariffs. So we've got a couple of news shocks coming up while everybody's focused on what's happening, what's happening with Nvidia and Walmart and everything else. There's some other background news here, and we've got warships off the coast of Venezuela. We got stuff going on we got to pay attention to. But for right now, the stock prices look okay. This decision, Kenny, in the Supreme Court could be big,
Yeah.
a big reversal. How do you think that turns out? If they say, okay, the tariffs can't continue, do markets go through the roof or through the floor?
You know, I think the pressure will be on the markets to go lower if that happens, right? I don't think investors will find that as a positive. I actually think investors think that the tariffs have worked out remarkably well, and it hasn't created the hysteria that the left thought it was, or tried to tell what it was going to create back in February, March, and April. I don't think it's done any of that. In fact, I think you'll find a lot of people saying that that the country has benefited from the negotiations and the tariffs that have been initiated. So I think if the Supreme Court finds against it and says that we got to give all the money back and all that stuff, I think the market's going to see that as a negative, because where's that money going to come from? If we don't have it all just sitting in an account to pay back, then we're going to have to go to the bond market to raise it, and bond market means we're going to have to issue more bonds, more supply, put pressure on bond prices, yields will go higher, and stocks will suffer. That's my quick analysis.
Yeah, okay. Let me take about 180-degree side of that from Kenny. I think that tariffs are indeed a tax. They have to be paid as things come in. I think that I agree with Ronald Reagan that you don't get more of something by taxing it. This is a tax. So if they have to pay it back and they have to go to the bond market, it means they squandered the funds that they had. And they didn't husband them in a judicious manner. So I also think that without those tariffs, without those brakes being stood on for international trade here it could have a short-term period of disruption, but international trade should increase. If you can imagine, for instance, now I think this is political, okay, but just imagine Nvidia with free access to the China markets and how those sales would increase further. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea. I'm just using as an example to say when you open trade, you get trade. When you tax trade, you get less trade. Whether it's legal or not, that's up to the Supreme Court. But ultimately, this should be for free markets, for real free market people. And I believe
Well,
capitalism.
listen, I hear you.
I think you got to get rid of the tariffs.
Okay, so then you got to get. So you saying you get rid of them all around? Everyone's going to get rid of tariffs because the problem was that the trade was out of balance, right? We were getting tariff, but we weren't charging tariffs. Wasn't that the whole basis of what Trump did? He was going to try to equalize it.
He was trying to equalize tariffs, and he was starting from the point that of the trade balance, of the trade deficit, which
Correct.
that's a to me a bad metric because Vietnam, for instance, from which we buy a whole lot of really inexpensive stuff based on labor, we're getting cheap labor. We're importing cheap labor rates, which we can't compete with here, which would raise the cost of goods in this country significantly. And the population of Vietnam is much, much smaller than the population of the United States. They can't consume as much in Vietnam as we can at 350 million people in the United States. They can't.
Correct.
So if you're going to look at a percentage, fine, but you can't look at absolute numbers. And we want that cheap stuff. It gives us a much higher quality of life. There are a whole lot of benefits that don't get considered in these tariff things, and so I think it's a
does
very
it give us
smart
but does it give us a higher quality of life, or is it a lot of junk that we're importing? Right? You and I could sit about this all day because maybe it's time that we stop actually importing all the junk because a lot of it is junk.
it might be junk. Some of it might be junk, but it wouldn't be imported if Americans didn't have an appetite for junk. If Americans want to buy junk, sell them junk. I'll set up a junk store down at the corner, Kenny, and I'll import that stuff all day long if that's what they want to buy.
Okay, well, I'm
Find
not in
out
that
what they
camp.
want to buy. Listen, if they're buying strawberry ice cream and I'm making vanilla, guess what I'm doing tomorrow? I'm making strawberry ice cream. But
Hey, but I don't say that's not junk.
a lot of homemade ice cream's never junk. I should speak with greater reverence about ice cream. It holds a very special place in my heart.
I know. And the older
You
I
get
get,
it.
the
We
more
got
I
to
like
go.
it.
Mahaffee's waiting. We got to get to him. We'll get back to ice cream, but know that Kenny and I don't agree on these tariffs. I think, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I'm not sure how it'll shake out. I am sure that they are a tax and they impede trade longer term.
Yeah, and that we agree. It is a tax. I agree, but I'm not sure that it's impeding longer term. I think the economy's done fine with these taxes on it so far, and I think most Americans would agree that they're not concerned. They just change the way they spend, right? They choose not to buy something anymore.
Well, we'll give this a little bit of time. We'll come back and discuss why you're wrong about that. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Polcari, Chief Market Strategist from Slate Stone Wealth. It's good to be the host. We're coming back with Mahaffee. Please stay with us.
It is.
Thanks for being with us on Season 9 of the FarrCast. And now, political analyst Dan Mahaffee and your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. Dan Mahaffee, now in Season 9 of the FarrCast, joining us bright and early from the Midwest, which is way earlier than it is here in Naples, Florida. Beautiful sunny day. If you like clouds, you wouldn't like Naples today, got to tell you, folks. People in Washington are always so shocked and disappointed when I tell them it's warm here. Hey, it's Florida. I got a big secret for you. It's warm here. That's what you do in Florida. That's why people come. Okay, that's just a word to my friends in D.C. Dan Mahaffee, president of the Dr. Scholl Foundation, a scholar at the think tank, Washington think tank, for the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. Dan's been there for over a decade, actually, as a full-time person, now adjunct, and the senior political analyst on the FarrCast. Welcome back, Dan.
Good morning, Michael, and thank you. And I'm going to not depress our viewers, listeners, by avoiding sharing the Chicago weather forecast, and we'll just stick with the Naples outlook.
So just quickly, you're not playing golf today, Dan?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay. All right. No golf today for Dan. Thank God I can't say that. Little golf this afternoon coming up for Farr. Dan, the Epstein vote went through the Senate without much debate. Mike Johnson's not happy about it. Explain to us what's happened and what this Epstein vote will actually mean for President Trump.
Well, look, this throws the ball right back at the president's feet on terms of releasing these files. Clearly, this has driven a rift into his base, an issue that continues to resonate with the public, the sordid details, all the people in power of both parties. But the ultimate release is going to come at some point. Do they delay it because of some further investigation, or do they cite national security, or is ultimately the released product so redacted as to be worthless? Those are all questions that are outstanding, but it's now back to the administration on whether they release this. And look, this comes, we haven't seen anything move through Congress this quickly in ages. So, does this political pressure get to the administration at a time when, look, the this is weighing on them at the same time as the economic polling numbers aren't sounding so good? Uh, so how do they turn this? The president's U-turn was pretty remarkable for someone who so far has said, I'm not involved. There's nothing to see here. But look, we'll see, because some of those emails that have been released so far already by the congressional investigation, those proved pretty damning, and now have the public attention still firmly on this and an issue not going away.
Um, okay, so we're going to watch all of this. Are we going to see any problems, or will this be swept under the proverbial political floor mat that seems to be boundless in President Trump's
No,
administration?
this can't be swept away, because this has a momentum all of its own now, as we've seen. If there was something that has clearly changed at least the president's ability so far to really manage events, and most importantly, not manage events, but the perception of events. Clearly here, we've seen that luster come off him there.
Okay. All right. So this is actually a big deal, and we need to watch this.
I would keep an eye on it, of course. It has gone on. And again, at a time of distrust in our institutions and leadership, what more will stay what better for the public eye than this kind of sordid behavior by the elites type story?
Greg Valliere this morning brings up something I hadn't paid attention to. He said the hardcore members of MAGA are furious at President Trump because he would welcome legal workers from other countries. There's a labor shortage in much of the U.S., which Washington is finally recognizing, says Valliere. The shortage is particularly acute in the computer chip industry, and Trump, looking everywhere for economic stimulus, wants to train skilled workers here. This is infuriated MAGA, which wants to keep the workers out despite Trump's assertion that more skilled workers are an economic necessity.
Right, Michael. This is again where the management of expectations, the policy, the same MAGA voter that was sold total transparency on the Epstein files was also sold a bill of total lockdown on immigration, and getting a lot of those folks out of the country. But the reality, as we've talked about on this program for, I think, all of the 9 seasons, is the United States does not have all the workers it needs. And some of that is because there are high level fields like computer chips, research, things like that, where, yes, we do need to bring in expertise from overseas. And the economic numbers will tell you we benefit from it. But also that you have areas like farm workers, agriculture, everything from blueberry picking to butchery needs immigrant workers, because a lot of Americans don't want to do that kind of work. But the question for me then, and as we've been through here just in the Chicago area, if you're squeezing one end of the balloon in terms of the immigrant workforce, where are you looking to make up for this? So is it in these raids? Do we have more of these? Types of just broad scale immigration actions that, anger the community. And I don't think they've done well for the administration's perception, too, of the immigration policy. So, again, this is again where the president's promises and his ability to deliver are coming up against the demographic and economic reality.
So, will this move the needle and actually maybe loosen immigration, move it back in the other direction?
No, I don't think it moves it back in the other direction. Honestly, I think they try and downplay the arrival of these high-skilled immigrants while stepping up more prominent enforcement action, more visible raids and actions like that. So you see the needle move in that direction, not really relaxing the policies overall. And again, it'll, I think, have a question of how does that look to particularly independents who are seeing the immigration policy. They want secure borders, but then when they see tear gassing and SWAT team type raids at Home Depot, they don't go along as far as that.
We're seeing the crime rate and certainly the rate of murders in the U.S. has dropped precipitously since the peak of COVID. It had been number of murders in the U.S. had increased for quite a while. That's really started to fall off in 2021, really a lot lower. And there are all sorts of reasons that they're being discussed in the newspaper now. It, there was a crime surge going back to this book, Freakonomics, years ago, surge in crime through the 60s and into the 70s, all across America. New York City was huge. And then it kind of stopped. And the reason in Freakonomics was the birth control pill. All of a sudden, you didn't have as many unwanted children to families that didn't exist, and crime fell as a result more of a social shift, according to Freakonomics. They're not sure exactly what's happened in this fall, a significant fall in the murder rate. Maybe schools we went back to school. Maybe we did this. Maybe went said these articles I've been reading. But with this fall in the murder rates, is this something that with the surge of National Guard and immigration things, is this something President Trump will take credit for? And how much will it matter in the upcoming elections?
Look, I think the president will try and take credit for it. The president is very good at taking credit for things he's accomplished as well as things he hasn't. Look, he will look at that, and I think anyone, no matter our partisan affiliation, should be pleased to see that our nation is having its murder rates down and becoming a safer place. So.
Amen.
I
Yes.
think we look at that positively. Are these deployments, though, something that are happening as the trends are already going down? That's certainly one thing to ask. And again, will the public see the benefit of that, or again, is the public more off put by the imagery of troops in the streets than the perception of safety?
As you are looking around the world this morning, and we have for the past few weeks, and we're thinking about what's going on in China, particularly with NVIDIA's earnings and the chips, and then we watching what's going on in Russia, Israel, Middle East, etc., and now, of course, Venezuela. What's capturing your attention? Do we actually engage? Are we going to invade Venezuela? I mean, tell me where you are in the rest of the world, and I got to go. I have 1 minute.
Well, look, I think invading Venezuela would really tie us down in a conflict. I don't think we need to enter. And hopefully, if there is negotiations that somehow get Maduro out, and the Colombians are saying perhaps that might happen. Look, that's hopeful that that can happen without conflict. But look, the cartels are going to be well ingrained in whatever comes after that down in that region. Beyond that, though, if you look at China, look, I think China is being very aggressive against Japan right now. We've had the remarks by the new Japanese prime minister that seem to indicate that Japan would see any kind of Chinese invasion of Taiwan, of course, as they would, as Japan would see that as a security risk to Japan. But the Chinese have been really adamant, of course, in their outraged response to that. And look, I think it's the Chinese, as they do, trying to really intimidate a new Japanese government, trying to intimidate the Japanese public as well. And frankly, if what I am interested to see is if the president, given how positive his last meetings were with the Japanese, backs up his rhetoric and seems to try and tell China to tone it down.
Yep. Dan Mahaffee is the president of the Dr. Scholl Foundation, our senior political analyst on the FarrCast. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome, Michael. Enjoy golf.
Thank you. I promise. I always start out enjoying golf, and then I have to hit the ball. Coming up, Daryl Owen from the Owen Group. What's going on with oil? What's going on Capitol Hill? A lobbyist and insider's view. He's a great FarrCast fan favorite. When we come back, please stay with us.
Thank you for joining us on the FarrCast. And now, back to your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. Daryl Owen, D.O., my buddy, is a nationally recognized energy policy, 12 years in the U.S. Senate, chief of staff for U.S. Senator Bennett Johnston of Louisiana, who was one of the most colorful characters and one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. I'm going to say nicest guys, though. I talked to a couple of people who got on the wrong side of the senator, and they didn't think he was that nice, and they didn't enjoy being on the wrong side of the senator. He also was the director of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. He is a lobbyist in Washington, but if you want to get something done with energy and policy in D.C., this is the man to see, who spent years in the rooms where it happened. And we got so much to talk to him about today. Welcome back, Daryl.
Michael, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I'm always curious how much of your time slot you're going to waste overinflating my resume, but I love it.
As soon as I overinflate it, you let me know, Harry. Don't ask Daryl. He tries to, he's got this humility thing going, which is totally lost on me, of course. All right, Daryl, we were talking with Dan Mahaffee in our second segment here this morning about the politics of the Supreme Court, the partisanship of the Supreme Court. There are a lot of folks who believe that this Roberts Court is nothing more than a Trump court, and that these conservative justices are making political decisions to stay in the president's favor. I have suggested that they are still rooted in the judicial history and responsibilities of being the third branch of government, and that they are largely, very firmly, solidly rooted in the law, though everybody has an opinion and has for years. Certainly, my friend, Justice Scalia, I would have conversations with him, and you'd feel like you were talking to Ronald Reagan. He certainly had a very clear view, but he was also an amazing scholar. Give us your thoughts on that, would you please?
Happy to, Michael. Politics of the Supreme Court, at least internally, are always a little bit murky. But the way I frame the issue, the court has always been political. John Adams appointed John Marshall as Chief Justice on his way out the door because Marshall was a Federalist and Adams was trying to protect the Federalist agenda against Thomas Jefferson, who was going to succeed him. I think the question is not whether the court is political. The question is whether the court is partisan.
I like that. I like that. Tell me what you mean.
Any given president is going to nominate members of the Supreme Court in accordance with his or her philosophy, conservative versus liberal. And assuming those nominees are confirmed, the court is going to reflect that outlook on policy. That's different than being overtly partisan. Now, where you draw the line between political and partisan is in the eye of the beholder. But I'm hopeful that the court is going to demonstrate that it is not reflexively partisan in this upcoming ruling on tariffs. That law to me seems black and white, completely clear about what the president's authorities are and are not. And judicial precedent would suggest that if you're going to delegate that much authority, if the Congress is going to delegate that much authority in legislation, it will be very specific. This is not a specific statute. There is no delegation. Trump is reading it extremely broadly. My sense is, and those who know the court much better than I do, is that Roberts wants to reestablish the credibility and the independence of the court. This is the perfect case to do that. And he is likely going to drive a very strong ruling I've heard some speculation, even as strong as 8-1 or 9-0, that the president has exceeded his power. That would go a long way, I think, to alleviating concerns that the court is partisan. It's clearly
8-1,
conservative.
8-1 or 9-0. 8-1 or 9-0. Who would be the one?
I would guess Thomas could be Alito.
Okay.
Hard to know.
Okay.
And the two of them could band together, could be 7-2. I mean, but the point is, I think it's going to be a very strong ruling. And I think in part that's by design. I think they really want to reestablish that they're not partisan. They're going to continue to be political. These are very conservative people, as you know. But this one sort of tees itself up for them to put their cred back in place.
Got it. All right. So we'll watch this decision. It certainly does seem, and as we cover Wall Street, Washington, and the world, this issue of whether these tariffs hold up or not, Daryl, is a big deal. When do you think we get this decision?
I think relatively quickly, Michael. This is not a mind bender. The one thing that I found curious is Amy Coney Barrett saying, well, how are we going to refund the money? Well, that's not your responsibility, court. That's like saying, we can't enforce all these new amendments to the Constitution because what are we going to do with all these former slaves? That's the prerogative of.
Yeah, got it. Daryl, let's move, if we can, to this recent visit by MBS, who was just in Washington visiting the president. You were in Washington. You're in Washington this week, aren't you?
Correct.
Okay. What was it like downtown? Normal state visit from a foreign dignitary, or different?
We went from a government shutdown where there was no traffic to the biggest traffic snarls I've ever seen. Snowplows blocking intersections, sirens everywhere. It was a total mess.
Snowplows blocking every direction? Snowplows?
Yes. That's how they block traffic here. They can't plow the snow, but they do a great job of blocking traffic using their snowplows.
That's fascinating. So that they really thought it was a much higher security risk. I mean, if the Secret Service is getting involved in that, there was a very high security risk. I wonder why that would have gotten so elevated that they would have needed to do that. Any thoughts about why they'd have had that response, Daryl? You've been in Washington a long time. You've seen a lot of foreign dignitaries come in and out. Everybody. Xi Jinping comes out and they don't have snowplows, right?
Well, not generally. They all mess traffic up, but this was a special case. You never know what they know that we don't know.
Yes.
So I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt where that is concerned. But I will tell you, as a weary traveler, I'm glad he's gone.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have lived, born in Washington, and spent my entire life in Washington. Now in Florida, in case D.C. government's listening, but. It didn't matter who the president was. Didn't matter who the president was. It was always a nuisance having the president go anywhere, whether you liked him, whether you didn't like him. That motorcade and the way they stop traffic, it's something you have to live with. So when these foreign dignitaries come, it's the same thing. What was the purpose of this visit? Did the president do himself any good with this visit? Did he advance the cause of the United States with this visit? Are we going to be better off economically? Are we going to be better off politically? I don't think we're as desperate for the oil anymore, are we?
Well, I think we are. I think there has been an implicit agreement between Trump and MBS since before Trump was sworn in that the Saudis would continue to restrict oil production while Biden was president, and would relax those restrictions as soon as Trump became president to bring prices down. I don't have any doubt that that is at work. And you question, well, what do the Saudis get out of that if they're not getting as much money? Well, they get F-35s. They're seeking nuclear technology. Now, that did not come up in this particular meeting, but they're seeking nuclear technology without the normal safeguards. The Trump has committed to build a massive data center over in Saudi Arabia. So the Saudis get quite a bit. In fact, most people that I've been hearing from believe the Saudis did better in this deal than we did. MBS is an unsavory character, and I won't dwell on that. But he has done some pretty remarkable things in Saudi Arabia. Allowing women freedoms, allowing young people freedoms. He has reined in the extremist religious people over there. He is promoting economic development. Now, they still waste an incredible amount of money, and they're still probably pretty corrupt at the royal family level. But he's done remarkable things to turn that country around. Foreign policy is oftentimes pretty messy, and you have to deal with unsavory people. So I think having that relationship and promoting it overall is probably a good thing for the U.S. government. If we can get the Saudis reconciled with the Israelis, if we can keep the Iranians cornered until ultimately their regime collapses and they can reform, I think that's all in our interest. We've had to swallow a lot of bitter pills to get there, but I do think that that's a long term in our interest.
Effective. Okay, so we're seeing the sausage making of politics up close and personal in Washington, D.C. That happens when you live there. And I love your answer, Daryl. I think it's exactly right. As messy and horrible and distasteful as it all is, I've always, when I was young in my 20s, I thought I think I'd really like to get into politics. I really like people. I like talking. I wouldn't mind running for an election. And as I got to spend some time on Capitol Hill and actually watch what these people have to do for a living, there's no way in hell, Daryl. No, no, no. It would kill me. The compromise, back and forth and over and over and over again in the backroom deal making and what these people have to. No, you were as close as anybody I've known. I think maybe you could have done it. I think, in fact, I think you would have been an outstanding U.S. Senator. I know you would have been an outstanding U.S. Senator. And like most of my bright friends, I wish you had run for president. I'd put you in. I'd put you in right now. So would everybody else who knows you, by the way, regardless of your political leanings. You're just smart enough to do it. But I mean, it really is a life that the average American doesn't understand, I think. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I will tell you, I came to Washington with the idea of ultimately running for political office. I became staff director of the committee. I had the perfect opportunity to run in my hometown. And this is going to sound arrogant, but there was a near virtual certainty that I would have won. I took one look at what I was going to have to do and what I was going to forego to do it, and I declined. And that's a canary in the coal mine. I had a job at the Energy Committee where I had a tremendous amount of influence on policy. And that was very meaningful to me. And I loved it. I would have given all that up to go be one of 435 in the House of Representatives. I would have been living on airplanes to and from Shreveport. I would have been spending my time raising money. I'd have been talking to the Rotary Club, who doesn't know and doesn't want to know the realities of what go on in Washington. And I just thought, why the hell would I do that to myself? And that was back when the system was far more functional than it is now. All these guys do anymore is raise money and show up and vote yes if you're in the majority and no if you're in the minority. There is no backroom deal making. There is no reward for creativity. There is no ability to develop policy. These guys do nothing but raise money and give speeches.
How many? Dan Mahaffee has talked to us before because there's data. There are data. Sorry, I want to be go back to my English major roots. There are data on how many hours a congressman or a senator spend raising money in their working hours and waking hours. Ladies and gentlemen, it's ridiculous. It's at least 6 hours a day in fundraising, and some days more, and that's every day on average. Does that ring true with you, Daryl?
Well, I don't know about the 6 hours, but I know the overwhelming demand is for them to raise money. You don't advance by being smart or creative. You advance by raising money.
You
And
advance
if you
by
get
raising.
advanced, then the amount of money you are expected to raise goes up. And it's had a very corrosive effect, not just from the standpoint of quid pro quo. It's had a corrosive effect from the standpoint of that's what they do. They don't sit around and do policy, and it's not the same place at all that it was when I was there, and I didn't want to be a part of it when I was there at
Will
the
this
member level.
pendulum swing back, Daryl? Will it ever come back? I mean, it's gone so far. I mean, I keep thinking back, and I don't know why I go back to the Obama administration, which seemed to be when the ugliness started to pick up some traction at the end of the Bush administration. That's where it sits in my psyche. Am I wrong about that?
I would date it all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s. That's when John McCain
Yes.
started to run against the system. He had been one of the Keating Five,
Yes.
and he did his confessional. And then, in order to cleanse himself, he turned around and started campaigning against the institution of government, parking places at National Airport, health insurance, all the perquisites that senators got. And that, that resonated with the public because they don't know any better. But it really turned the Senate from being a collegial body into one where castigating your fellow colleague was a great way to advance your own career. And that's when you saw Bennett Johnston retire, Sam Nunn retire, Lawton Childs retire, Jim Sasser retire, Don Regal retire. They didn't want to serve in that sort of an institution. So the long-standing scions of the Senate left. And now you have a very rapid turnover, people who've never seen the institution be productive. They think this is normal. This is not normal, but they don't have any frame of reference to know that. And the castigation of their fellow colleagues is sort of their bread and butter. And I think it's hard to see how and when that could turn around.
We were also discussing, I want to get your take on this. We were discussing the gerrymandering, the court's decision in Texas, whether that gets reversed. Dan was explaining it was because Texas went about it the wrong way. Whether the Supreme Court holds it up or not, we'll see. But in fact, it looks like California should hold in their redistricting. So are we going down a rat hole race to the bottom here as we start these sorts of things with gerrymandering or stacking the court or all of these other nuclear options or getting rid of the filibuster as the president advocates?
Well, I'll touch on the filibuster in a second because I feel pretty passionately about that. The actions of Texas and the corresponding actions of California and others are making a bad practice worse. Gerrymandering is one of the reasons that no one cooperates with anyone else because they get published. Republicans are not worried. Their districts are so conservatively drawn. They don't worry about running against a Democrat. They worry about being challenged by a MAGA Republican.
Right, they're going to get primaried. Yeah,
and right. So they get the two parties are being driven further and further to the extremes. They used to sort of be at the 40-yard lines. Now they're down by the end zones and retreating to the back line. And the gerrymandering is the proximate cause of that. These initiatives are going to make it much, much worse. If you're in Texas and you're a Democrat, you're largely disenfranchised. Now, will the court uphold the opinion? I've not read the opinion and I've not read a good summary of it. The best I can come up with is that the court said it was done for racial purposes, not political. The Supreme Court has ruled that you cannot you can do it for political, but you can't do it for racial. So will that opinion stand? I just don't know. In terms of filibuster, Michael, the worst thing that I can imagine for public discourse in Washington would be the loss of the filibuster. You will have wild swings of policy. You'll have Obamacare one year, You'll have Trump get elected and repeal Obamacare the next. How in God's name does a country function that way? How does the business community react when you've got, and you just saw this, billions of dollars put in place and opportunities and incentives to produce renewable energy? An administration that comes in the subsequent year pulls the plug out on every one of those, takes the leg out from it. You've got companies who've invested billions of dollars in projects. They're well on their way to completion, and they're receiving stop work orders. The country cannot function, and it certainly cannot prosper that way.
Daryl Owen always provides some of the best insights we ever get, ladies and gentlemen, and I am very, very grateful for my friend Daryl. We learned so much. Daryl, just finally, a lot of folks who are going to listen to you today are probably a little depressed hearing what we've learned about Washington this morning. Is there any hope that we get back? Is there any hope that we can get good people in government? Is there any hope that reason, you know, that line in Mark Antony's speech, "O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason," seems to be echoing in my head today. Is there a place for judgment and reason and temperament, modest temperament, in government again? Can it come back? What has to happen, Daryl? And I need you to do this in about 45 seconds because we're over time.
I'm more prone to quote Boudreaux and Thibodeau than I am Mark Antony, but there are reasonable people in the institution now. You saw some of them rise up and change their position to fund the government. They've had their throats ripped out by the extreme of their own party. But I don't think they feel apologetic about that. I think the parties at some point are going to become so extreme that voters in the middle are going to assert themselves in a more united fashion. They're going to stop splitting between one party and the other, and they're going to operate more cohesively and hopefully bring leaders to the fore that are more reasonable and are more temperate.
I think it's a great answer. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to Daryl and listen to me. I'm going to weigh in on his side. Vote, and it comes down to your vote. And until the people speak, this isn't going to change. They've got this system probably where they want it, oddly, as horrible as that is. It's up to us to change it back. We started 250 years ago to get it where to get a good start. We need to capture some of that wonderful land back for the American middle, for American common sense, for American values, for American optimism and integrity and honor. Those are the things we all still harbor and yet find glaringly absent in politics today. Then I don't want to call these people my personal representatives. They're not representing me. They don't look like I want to look like as an American on the world stage or care about my fellow man the way I do indeed care about my fellow man, and I think you do too. Hope you've enjoyed this week's FarrCast. Thank you so much to all my guests, especially my great friend Daryl Owen. We will be back again next week to do it all again. For my producer, Harry Jennings, everybody at Farr Miller in Washington, thank you for listening in Naples, Florida. I'm Michael Farr. We'll see you next week.
That's it for this week's episode of the FarrCast. Thanks to this week's guest, Kenny Polcari, Dan Mahaffee, and special guest, Daryl Owen. And thanks to you, our listeners. We hope you enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it for you. FarrCast is produced by Michael Farr and Harry Jennings and comes to you weekly for free on all major podcast platforms, including TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please be aware that anytime we or any of our guests mention a specific company, sector, or refer to performance in relation to an earnings report, news headline, or economic trend, it is not a recommendation to buy or sell. Review the risks and rewards of any investment with your financial advisor for what specific investment and general strategy is appropriate for you before you make any investment decision. And If we can be of assistance here at Farr Miller in Washington, please reach out to me at hjennings@farrmiller.com. We are here to help, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with one of our investment professionals to help you navigate your financial course across the changing investing landscape. We are grateful for all of your notes and comments, and we try to respond to as many as we can. Please keep those emails and messages coming. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you for listening to the FarrCast, Wall Street, Washington, and the world. Farr Miller in Washington is a group comprised of investment professionals registered with Hightower Advisors, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. Some investment professionals may also be registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. All information referenced herein is from sources believed to be reliable. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC have not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of the information contained in this podcast. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates make no representations or warranties, expressed or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information or for statements or errors or omissions or results obtained from the use of this information. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates assume no liability for any action made or taken in reliance on or relating in any way to the information. This podcast and the materials contained herein were created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of the authors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates. Farr Miller in Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented in any way to any entity as tax or legal advice. Clients are urged to consult their tax and or legal advisors for related questions.